G'day everyone, Johnny. I'm sick of looking at you on the screen. I've had a lovely break from you, and all I see is your dial all day long. What's going on?
Well, Hoodie, I've been busy all day. I've been at council meetings. I got a bus ticket. I threw you under the bus a few times. I've been
You
out
throw
in
me
the,
under the bus again.
apparently.
I can't rely on you for anything, can I?
Oh no, I'm a shocking friend.
Yeah,
Terrible.
when I'm under fire, I turn around. Where are you? Hiding under a bush somewhere.
I, yeah.
You're as
Put the
weak
arms
as
up.
you're as weak as the steam off my cup of tea.
That's right.
In-house joke, Craig Kelly. In-house joke. Great to see you, mate. This Thursday, the 17th of April. Welcome to Club Grubbery.
No, look, great to be with you boys. I was down there last week with John down in Cooma. We made a bit of a trip down there to the Snowy Mountain. It was good to call into John's place, and he was very generous. A bit thirsty work sort of thing, so we stopped and had a drink. And it was a big trip for the day, but it was well worth it.
He didn't throw you under the bus, did he?
No. No, he was very good. We while we're going down there for, I heard stories of. I'd seen a couple of pictures if you posted online about some of the destruction of the national park that was being done by this new transmission lines for Snowy 2.0. Now, I've been a critic of Snowy 2.0 from the word go. When Malcolm Turnbull first brought it up, I was the chairman of the Coalition Backbench Committee on Energy. And about, they would never, even then, as a member, I'm not a member of Parliament, I'm the chairman of the Coalition Backbench Committee, meant to say, yes, this is wonderful, better than sliced bread. They wouldn't give us the full business case. So we're going on a one-page document that we're supposed to commit billions of dollars of taxpayers' money to this. And look, you could see it took about 30 seconds or a minute on the back of a drinks coaster to work out, this don't add up. This doesn't make sense. And this is when the thing was going to cost like $2 billion for the construction and $2 billion for the transmission lines. Well, now we're out to a combined cost of $20 billion and we're still counting. The thing is a giant white elephant. It will just push up electricity prices in the years to come. But the destruction to the environment, we didn't really know what we were going down to see, but we thought it might be worthwhile having a look. But unless you saw it with your own eyes, you could not believe basically the rape and pillage. It looks like, the B-52 bombers have gone through the place and just leveled it for kilometre after kilometre after kilometre. It's almost a strip 200 metres wide that they've ripped down. I'm standing next to one of the trees there. We're up to this tree. I'm no expert on the age of trees, but it was well over 100 years old. I asked a few people online, have you got anyone with the expertise, how old this tree would be? They sort of chopped the top of it off, and the tree's about 40 metres high, just standing up like a stalk. And the guy said, he reckons about maybe 200 to 300 years old.
Yeah.
And they've just, this magnificent tree, they've just chopped the top of it. Now, and this is for the transmission line. So it's to take the power into Snowy 2.0. So it's not new power they're generating. It's to transport the power into Snowy 2.0. And remember, Snowy 2.0 destroys power. So they pump the water up the hill, right? So for every 3 units of energy you take to pump the water up the hill, when you release the water, you only get 2 units of energy back because you lose as the water's pumped. It's 27 kilometres to pump the water up the hill, right? Which is not the way any pumped hydro scheme works in the world. So you're pumping the water up 27 kilometres uphill. There's the friction losses of that, and that's why you only get, so for 3 units of energy up, 2 units of energy delivered. So it destroys 1 unit of energy. For every 2 units it delivers to the grid, it destroys 1 unit along the way. And that's what these transmission lines are for. It was, as I said, the video got, I think, about 500,000 views. But it doesn't, the video doesn't even show a tenth of how bad it actually was.
Well, I've just come back from the USA, did a speaking tour over there for 3 weeks, and we drove from LA down to Phoenix, Arizona, 6-hour drive, and 2 hours after that was non-stop driving past solar panels, just decimating the countryside. And then when we drove from Phoenix to Tennessee through New Mexico and Texas, 2 to 3 hours, Craig, wall-to-wall wind turbines.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, the Yanks hate them.
Yeah.
They
Well,
blow them with a passion. None of them were turning. They were just sitting there.
that was the other funny thing on the way down there, because we drove, you go through Yass there, and So you come out of Goulburn. I used to always take the turn off out of Goulburn down to Canberra. So I rarely went to Yass. And of course, you got the turbines on the eastern side there of Lake George, but there's a whole lot of there at Yass, right? Now, they've only gone in the last couple of years, right? It was 4 of, I think, the 10 of them were broken, or 3 of the 8 were broken. Like they weren't turning, so we had a few of them working. The rest looked like one of the blades had broken off. The other one was jilted. Yeah. Honestly, the wind power is a complete and utter scam. It is an industry run on subsidies. It would never, no one would build a wind turbine if it wasn't for all the government subsidies that are involved. It's a massive subsidy scheme. And what defeats them is not the fact they're renewable, it's their intermittency. Right? Because whatever, you've got no idea when you've got to get the wind. If the wind blows too strong, they have to turn them off. If the wind's not blowing enough, it doesn't create any electricity. Right? So you get this huge amount of intermittency in that generation from basically 0 to 100%. And you've got no way of controlling it. And that's, for an electricity grid, remember you've got to have supply has to match the much, demand has to match supply has to match demand at all times. So you've got to be able to fine-tune the amount of supply being put into the grid. And with these wind turbines, you'd only pay for the wind turbines, but you've got to pay to back the darn things up. It's just, and we hear Chris Bowen and Albanese, renewables are the cheapest form. Well, no, because you're not counting in all the costs of backing up the intermittency. You're not counting in all the costs of the additional transmission lines that need to be built. And when you put all those costs in, it just gets higher and higher and higher. So we've seen over the last 15 years, the greater the percentage of this intermittent generation of solar and wind we've had in the grid, the higher the prices have gone. Right? Mm. You're putting all this cheap electricity in the grid, you think the prices will go down, but they just continue to go up and up and up. And it's the same not only in Australia, everywhere around the world where they are pushing all this intermittent generation into the grid, their prices are going up and up. There's nowhere in the world, and also here, it's even worse. A lot of these other countries that are doing it have got some baseload power that they can hook into, like they've got, say, the nuclear plants, or they've got, they can, like the UK can tap into the nuclear power from France, and they can tap into the hydro from the Scandinavian countries, right? Our grid is standalone. There's nowhere else we can tap into, right? And nowhere in the world is attempting to run a grid on solar, wind, and backed up by big batteries, because any kid in primary school would look at the numbers and realise, hey, this is just going to make things more expensive. Yeah. And that's the policy of Albanese and Bowen. And we said,
and Craig, let's not forget too that any coal mine approval in Australia would have to have a plan to restore the land back to its natural state.
Correct.
That's not the case with these wind farms, is it?
No, correct. What you'll find, a lot of these farmers that have got wind turbines on their premises, right? What happens if these things have only got like a 20, 25-year life? If that, as I said, we saw some of them broken after a couple of years already down there outside of Yass, right? So when that 25 years goes up, there's no obligation upon these companies to actually take them down or to repair the land or to remediate the land, or we're left with these eyesores all around the country. These rusted carcasses are going to be left around the country in years to come as a reminder of the gross stupidity of this period of Australia's history.
Mm. You're on the mute there, Hoody.
Yeah, Blackout Bowen's done it again, eh?
Look, my mate Blackout Bowen, I've never seen a bloke that has failed in the many portfolios. He actually, when I first got into politics, he was the competition minister. I've just filmed a piece yesterday where I actually, back in 2008, I was trying to show what a hopeless competition industry was and how competition had collapsed and the policy had all wrong. This is like, 17 years ago, I've been arguing with this bloke. And what I did, I had a shopper docket from Woolworths back in 2008. And it's online there, so I had the original copy and about 36 everyday fruit and vegetable items. Well, I went back yesterday to buy exactly the same items and see how much they'd gone up over that period of time. Now, we know real wages, also not real wages, wages have gone up over that period of time 70 to 80%. Right? But the prices I found out were actually fourfold. They'd gone up fourfold in price, right in the heart of this bloke's electorate. He's failed as competition minister. Remember, he was the man behind one of the taxes, the retiree tax. He failed on that, and now he's in charge of energy. And the damage that this bloke is doing the long-term damage he is doing to our economy and our country, is just beyond words. And I just hope we've got a good independent candidate there running against him, called Matt Kamanzuli, out here in Western Sydney in the seat of McMahon. And, look, fingers crossed. The polling was looking good for Matt, but there's the Labor up to all sorts of tricks that they'll be up to, and just hope that they could teach all politicians a lesson. If you're going to be a politician and conduct yourself like Chris Blackout-Bowen, your electorate will wake up to you and vote you out.
Yeah, well, that's true. I did say to Hoody, I think Bowen getting ousted from his electorate, it'll be one of those moments, Craig, where people say, where were you on America's Cup Day? Where were you when the Olympics were announced? Where were you when Craig Bowen got booted out of Parliament? I mean, that's how big this is. I mean, he's such a parasite and a grub. He's never struck a blow in his life, and we are sick to death of these politicians like him that just demonstrate sheer arrogance, contempt, and are utterly useless and devastating for Australian communities.
Well, the one I forgot that what he was Shadow Health Minister for Labor during COVID, right? Yeah. So that was a time, right? If you were the Shadow Minister for Health during COVID, you're meant to be holding the government to account. Mm. He was the person he was the person in the best position to stand up and argue against the mandates. He was the person who was best to stand up for doctors' rights and say, you know what, you're a medical professional, you've studied, you've done the research. If you think ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine might be worthwhile trying, safe drugs, long-term safety profile for decades, it's being used around the world. If you think they're worth trying, well, I'm going to back you. Mm. Right? Instead, he was out there. Everything he did during COVID was to score political points against the opposition. He did all these videos attacking me, how I was a nutcase because I had apparently looked at the science on hydroxychloroquine, listened to people like Professor McCullough, Dr. Zelenko, Dr. Pierre Corey, Professor Murray, the thousands of these experts around the world. I'd listened to them, right? And this was somehow some type of idiot sort of scheme, because it was, again, he was simply playing politics rather than looking after the people of Australia.
Well, I've got to tell you, I spent several hours with Peter McCullough in Phoenix, Arizona, and he's coming to Australia later in the year, and I'm looking forward to joining him on that. And I'm sure Johnny will be involved in that as well. So that's being set up as we speak. But
yeah, that's fantastic. Well, wonderful man. He could have sat back during COVID, just sucked up, joined the gravy train. I think he's one of the most highly qualified people in his profession in the world, mind you, right?
Yeah.
And and he was banned off social media. He was banned off Twitter. Even Sky News at one stage. I lined up an interview with Alan Jones and Peter McCullough, and Alan had to go in the studio about 11 o'clock of the day to record it to catch Peter in his hospital he was working at in Texas. And Alan rang me up, and I said, there's some hassle getting it set up. And Alan rang me up. He said, "Oh, fantastic interview, fantastic. This Peter McCullough, how great he was, right?" Sky News cut it. Sky News refused to put the interview to air.
We're just talking about them. They're grubs. Sky News are grubs.
Well, they blackbanned me during COVID. Even during this election campaign, it's very difficult for us in the Libertarian Party to get a mention on Sky News. We pitch stories to them, they just show no interest. It's very, unfortunately, it's very difficult. One of the things we have to look at in our democracy is how the influence of the major parties, that they can influence things. Excuse me, I have a bit of a sneeze coming here. How the money can influence the media outlets, and how it's very hard. The media cover the election campaign as a Dutton versus Albanese contest, right? Now, remember, the combined votes of those major parties is what is lucky to be 70%. Probably less than that. Probably in the 60%. So you've got almost as many people not voting for the major parties as you have for either Labor or Liberals. You've probably got at least now 33% of the electorate voting outside the major parties. and yet the mainstream media covered it like as a presidential contest. It's very hard to get involved in debates and things like that. I said, hang on, you're having a debate with Chris Bowen and Ted O'Brien from the Liberals on energy. So why not include the Libertarian spokesman for energy, one Craig Kelly, right? And put a different point of view on it, right? Because I know where all the bodies are buried. Like, I've studied this, and it is a very complicated area of policy. It took me many years to get my head around it, but we just continually squeezed out sort of things. So we're going to make our own social media, and luckily that's growing stronger and stronger all the time.
Well, it's going to take over mainstream. There's no doubt about that. It already is in so many areas, Craig. But, for those of you watching this interview tonight, last night you will have sat through a comprehensive expose on Anthony Albanese, the 40-year veteran of the Communist Party.
That's right.
Card-carrying member. Australia, if you don't put people like Craig Kelly and Jared Rennick and others who are running it, on the freedom side of the fence, in some kind of control, this country is already a communist country in drag. That's what I said this morning in the interview. And it's going to shape up. It's going to be worse. If Albanese's in a second term, Australia's screwed. There's no doubt about that. And if that happens, Peter Dutton's got blood on his hands.
Well, one thing I'd say, look, if Albanese wins, we need people in Parliament that have got the backbone to get in there and hold him to account and have real attack at his policies and be bashing at him every single day up until the next election, exposing. Now, unfortunately, the Liberal Party have shown they can't do that. I'll give you the best example. Bowen and Albanese have got this new fines or taxes coming through on petrol and diesel cars. Now, the way that works is that let's just take Australia's top-selling cars, the Ford Ranger. Right? Bowen's plan is in 3 years' time, the penalty that Ford Ranger will have is about $14,000 or $15,000 added to the price of a new Ford Ranger. And the policy is madness, right? Now, the Liberal Party in Dutton should have been out there. They should have been smashing this every single day of the week for the last 3 years. Because the blokes are a bit switched off from politics, but they love their cars. And you let them think that the politicians are going to come in and tell them what cars they can and cannot buy. And their favourite cars they like to buy are going to have penalties and fines of $15,000 up to $25,000 on it. It's a new tax that's coming on top of these cars. They don't call that. Oh no, it's a levy or something. It's a bloody well tax that goes to the government that pushes up the price of these cars. If you told the average bloke that loves his four-wheel driving what was going on, they'd be riding in the streets. But yet the Liberal Party was so weak and so wish-washy. And because they signed up to net zero, they're only just saying now that they oppose this thing. It's too complicated. It's a complicated policy to explain. They need to be out there for well over the last 18 months, bashing away at this policy, explaining it over and over again until they've gone horse in the throat, right? And put memes up to it. Now, I've been criticising, attacking it. I've been doing talks about it, how this policy works, right? And even now you go out the street and you ask, I went to a bloke that owns a very big chain of petrol stations. I said, mate, do you know what they're trying to do? They're trying to kill your business, destroy you. And he wasn't even aware of the policy that they were putting in place. It's just to destroy our petrol and diesel cars. Right? And this is one of Albanese's policies. And tomorrow I think there's races up at Bathurst over the weekend. I'm going up there to talk to as many the motoring loving public as I can. Say, guys, do you know what actually Albanese is doing? Do you know what this policy is? Do you know your big V8s that you love, that they're going to put all these new taxes upon them? Yeah. The punters don't know because Liberals have been so weak and so frightened to criticise these policies.
So Craig Kelly, Libertarian. How come?
Well, look, people sometimes have a bit of a go at me for, for swapping around parties and, okay, you got to cop that. But look, the Liberal Party that I joined back in 2009 and represented them and won in 2010 and was part of the government with Tony Abbott. We won in 2013. That is not the Liberal Party of today. They completely and utterly lost their way before COVID, but when COVID came, it was not the Liberal Party that I did. So I had to make a choice. either I sat there, like many of my colleagues decided to do, and thought, look, I'll go along with this. I'll just shut up and I write it through, and I've got a pretty safe seat. I can just, go along and not say anything against any of the party lines, right? And that would have cost, that was $1 million, right? So if you get elected to federal parliament in the lower house, right, the salary you get, the bonuses, the car allowances, all everything, right? It's $1 million over 3 years, right? And then there's afterwards, if you've sucked up enough, right? There's all the post-political promotions and boards and overseas ambassadors you could get, sort of thing. So
Chairman's Lounge.
Well, I cut up my Chairman's Lounge cards. You remember the protest at Alan Joyce? I took a pair of scissors to that because I had so many great people in my electorate that were Qantas employees that had been mandated out of their work. So there's no way I could go and sit in his Chairman's Lounge and enjoy a beer or something or something to eat, when he was doing that to his employees. But it's worse. So I had to make a decision. Do I sit and shut up and take the money, or do I or do I speak out on this? And I sort of thought about it, and what was being done was just so wrong. I wouldn't have been able to live with myself, and I was, fortunate. Patients are fortunate, unfortunate. I was speaking at the time to people like Dr. Peter McCullough. We were having regular conversations. I was speaking at the time to people like Dr. Zev Zelenko over there, Dr. Brian Tyson in the US, Professor Dolores Cahill over in the UK. I was able to get onto the phone, and these people, they respected me, but these long conversations, and they explained things to me because I had no medical background, and they took a couple of times to explain it to me, to understand, to click, and I thought, you just can't shut up. You'd never live with yourself, right? Yeah. You'd never be able to live with yourself, right? Just to sit there and shut up and take the money. So that's why I left the Liberal Party. And the initial thought was that I'll try and contest my seat as an independent. There's been a great tradition of independence under the members of Parliament being elected. In fact, there was a bloke down in the New South Wales Parliament that had been charged with a child sexual assault, actually child rape, right? Child sexual assault offences, right? That recontested as an independent and won the seat. so I think there's a chance as an independent. So, but anyhow, that was the initial plan. Then Clive came to me and said, "Look, mate, you just can't run as an independent. This is too big an issue." He said, "I'll back you. We'll run a nationwide party. We'll run candidates on 151 seats. I'll back you whatever it takes." Mm-hmm. And that was, and I knew there was a bit of negativity associated with Clive's name. I weighed the two up. There are a whole lot of other factors that were thrown in the mix, and other promises made. But that's why I went with the UAP, was to give it a real crack. Look, we're unsuccessful. For many reasons. That's what might be a subject of another show. But we're unsuccessful. I don't want to go on those tonight. And then Clive deregistered the party, and then sort of lost all interest, after the election campaign. So I thought we needed to keep things going. We needed to keep the team we had together. We had some wonderful people, some of the best people I've ever met in my life that were our UAP candidates. Genuine people that loved their country, that wanted to get in there and fight, that weren't political people. You had this group of people that should have been kept together, that should have been nurtured to fight on, and unfortunately that Clive wasn't interested in that, and so I had a decision to make. I thought that I've still got a contribution to make to public policy. I would love to get in the Senate, because that's where you've got that Senate estimates process that you see Jared Rennick do so effectively, where you get to hold the bureaucrats to account. And those bureaucrats down in Canberra, they're slippery customers. They know how to obfuscate and slip off the hook, sort of thing, right? You need to know the tricks that they're all up to, and that's where I believe that I'd be the best value to my nation, was in the Senate, at those, especially on those Senate estimates, holding all those government bureaucrats to account. So That's why I've
Jared
joined the
Rennick.
Libertarians.
With Jared Rennick, what a team you two would make in there.
Yeah, well, look, Jared's a good bloke. We were in the party room when we were both in the Liberal Party. Okay? The way it works, you've got Morrison as the Prime Minister sitting up, like it's like a school classroom sort of setup, right? But only chairs. Morrison's sitting up the front as the Prime Minister. He's got Josh as the Deputy Leader and Little Proud as the National Leader sitting either side of him, right? They throw the floor open to anyone that wants to make any comment, right? So I get up and I bash on the COVID issues, how we were doing it wrong, how we were abandoning the principles of the Liberal Party, right? Two people gave me support. One was George Christensen, the other was Jared Rennick. The rest of them just sort of sit there and sort of put their head down and wouldn't make eye contact, is where Jared would stand up and support me and speak in on those principles. So he's and then to think that the Liberal Party's dumped him, right? Like, and they did it, and the way they did it, I don't know if you've covered that with Jared, right? They did these dodgy things, right? They had a vote of the Liberal Party members to see who'd get the third spot in the Senate, right? And the Liberal Party pulled all these dodgy tricks of letting Jared's people like to vote for Jared, excluding them and putting other people in, and doing dodgy things with the ballot. And Jared tried to take it to court. The court said, "Oh, sorry, it might be dodgy, but it's not for us to decide, how this all runs." So Jared's done the right thing for the country. He set up his own party. So in New South Wales, we're doing a joint ticket with him, and I'll tell you what, I'd love to be. We've got we've got a good candidate in the Libertarians in Queensland, Jim Wilmot. So hope you give Jim with Jim and Jared as well. I don't want to make sure we've got a good Libertarian candidate up there, but I would love to be in that next Parliament with both those guys, that we could hold these bureaucrats to account. And I'll tell you what, he would be able to. There'd be no taking of prisoners. I'll tell you.
Absolutely, Johnny.
Yeah, Craig, look, I've managed to find my way onto the board of the Aligned Council of Australia, and obviously there's a lot of focus from us in exiting the WHO, and I suppose a lot of people aren't really aware of what's coming up in May in Geneva with these pandemic agreements, and they're worse than we think. So I've got a bit of a note here. We've got some internal documents going on, but World Health Organization's new pandemic agreement is about to be voted on at the 78th World Health Assembly in May 2025. Maybe we need to go up there, Hoodie, and do a live.
Yep.
If passed, the consequences for Australia and the world will be staggering. Now, this is what it means for Australia. The WHO becomes the directing and coordinating authority. The preamble and Article 1. Australia must create an emergency health teams under the WHO oversight. Article 7.3. The WHO directs international rules while Australia foots the bill and loses control. The WHO funding comes increasingly from private interests, only 25% from member states, Big Pharma, Gates Foundation and Garvey. These private funders also participate in negotiations. Whose interests are being served here?
Well, that's why President Trump pulled out of the World Health Organization. And I'll tell you, when President Trump signed that, what's that presidential order he had? I'd been arguing we should be out of the World Health Organization since the COVID period. And when he got elected, they had those folders they bring up, and they said, the guy says, he's announcing what you're signing, President Trump. He goes, this is one for the US to exit the World Health Organization. And Trump goes, oh, that's a beauty, or something like that. I was cheering. It's a wonder they didn't hear me cheering from over here in Australia. I was jumping up and going, you bloody beauty. You didn't give it to them, right? Because that's something I've been arguing for in the last, we tried to argue this at the last election campaign, and no media coverage, except for I think The Guardian said that we were cookers or something, or how, we're making all this stuff up sort of thing, right? No media coverage whatsoever on the issue. But you're right. This plan will hand control in a future pandemic that the World Health Organization will be telling us what to do. Now, it is true this is not legislated in Australian law, right? And we don't have to actually follow it. But because we are still a member of the World Health Organization, because we signed up to these treaties, the government of the day, Labor Liberal, saying, oh, they're telling us what to do. We must do this. And they'll have the numbers in the Parliament to make sure whatever the World Health Organization, they'll tell us, you have to jump and we'll just say how high.
But not only that, if anything goes south, they can say, well, we were only following directions from the WHO.
South, they got it all wrong during the COVID period.
I know.
Well, you almost go through every single thing they recommended, right? They got wrong. Everything.
Yeah.
From where the origins of the virus to closing down the foreign borders to foreign out of China, to the different drugs, to the effectiveness of the vaccines, to banning hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. They got every single thing wrong, right? And honestly, I wouldn't trust that Tedros and his mates. You wouldn't trust them to put a Band-Aid on your little finger. Right? You wouldn't trust them. Like, he's an Ethiopian Marxist, right?
Yep.
That does the bidding of the Chinese and Gates, right? And he's going to tell us what to do. Are you kidding me?
Exactly right, and that's the way we're going. If we vote Labor back in, that's where we're going.
Right. And the Liberals, right? Mm-hmm. Our policy, what do you say? World Health Organization, fire the US, get out of it altogether, right? Come up with a new agreement of sharing data and sharing information with the US and get out of that World Health Organization. Because we've seen they're not only incompetent, they're corrupt.
Unbelievable. It really
and
is.
yet you're right. Labor and Liberal signing us up to this thing. They'll be there. Oh, yes, isn't it wonderful? We're all for these globalised treaties.
Mark Butler, he'll be there with bells on.
Well, I know, it's just
another card-carrying communist.
You just have to shake your head. And I've sat next to these blokes for 12 years in Parliament. And a lot of people think that everyone in Parliament, all these geniuses and so smart. I tell you, they're a bunch of dunderheads. Honestly, you wouldn't feed them. You wouldn't let them run the tuck shop at the school, right? They are completely clueless in most aspects of life, and they are governed and controlled by the bureaucrats down there in Canberra.
With everything that's happened with the Australian Constitution of 1901 and the Westminster system bogged down in this two-party system that we have now, which is a uni-party, it's one party, aided and abetted by the Greens. What can we do to reform this country's political system so we get proper representation?
Well, it's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg argument. We've got to get, the first, I believe, the key is the Senate. We've got to get enough independent, minor freedom parties elected into that Senate that can basically, use their numbers in the Senate to block certain legislation and to horse trade and to argue to try and break down a lot of the powers. Because every decision they make concentrates the power in the major parties. Like, just an example. The last Parliament, they passed this new legislation that kicks up the money they get from public funding for elections, right? So at every vote at this election is worth about $3.80. Right? You get paid. So in the Senate and the House of Reps, so $7. So if you vote for the Liberal Party, right, $7.60 goes to the Liberal Party. If you vote for the Labor, $7.60 of public money goes to those parties to run their election campaigns, right? But here's the thing. The minor parties get zero unless they get above 4%.
Yeah.
Right? So what you had most, so say Libertarians get 3.5. Say Jared Renning's party gets 3.5. Say One Nation gets 3.9, right? Say one of the other Family First gets 3.2 or something, right? All up that could come to 12% of the vote. Right? Now, here in New South Wales, what have we got? Is it 5 million voters, right? So 10%, let's do it 10%. 10%'s 500,000 people. 500,000 people by $3.80. What's that? Almost almost $2 million. Is that right? My math's right. Okay. If you get the 10%, you get the $2 million, right? Because the parties are divided and they're less than 4%, they get nothing. Now, the Liberal and Labor have got together at the subsequent election. They're going to kick that up to $5. So this is where we've got to come together. It's important we get these minor parties to come together. So the Liberal Party know for sure if they're running in a seat, let's say any seat they're going to get 40%, that's 40,000 votes. They're going to be, say 100,000 is more than, so 100,000 votes in a seat. It's more than that, but say just to round the numbers up, 40% they know they're guaranteed to get. They might get 39% in a bad election. They might get 43% in a good election. They can say, oh, we think we're pretty much guaranteed to get 40%. 40% is $40,000. 40,000 by $5 is 200 grand. So that one seat alone gets 200 grand for the lower house and 200 grand for the Senate. So they get $400,000 in that seat to spend on their election campaign, as where the minor parties, if they're less than 4%, get a duck egg. So this is how they gerrymandered the system. They also gerrymandered the system, but as a sitting member of parliament, right? So take it today, okay? I was out campaigning with a guy called Elvis. He's our candidate for my old seat of Hughes, right? Elvis has got to be self-funded, right? So during the election campaign, Elvis takes time off work. He has to pay for that. Elvis gets in his car to drive somewhere. He's got to pay for his car. He's got to pay for his petrol. Elvis wants to print something up. He has to pay for it out of his own pocket or donations to the party, right? If you're the sitting member, you get all that paid for by the government. So you firstly get your own wages being paid. You've got it's 5.5, probably 6, right, full-time staff that can go out and help your campaign. They're all paid for by the government. Your car is paid for by the government. Your petrol is paid for by the government, right? Your office is all paid for by the government when you run your campaigns from. You've got the best, the best photocopier money can buy, high-speed photocopier, which is all paid for by the government to print stuff out. You've got a printing allowance of $180,000 a year for you to create your flyers, right? With the exception of how to vote cards, but you can write all your flyers, your election propaganda, and get that out and get it mailed. So it's like $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 in resources paid for by the government that the sitting member has, and our libertarian candidates and other independent candidates are doing it off their own back on the smell of an oily rag. This is how they've corrupted the system, and this is why they've gerrymandered it into this sort of two-party political system. And this is why it's so important. If you vote, great if you can vote in the lower house, but in the upper house, hope you support the Libertarians. If you don't want us, support one of those other minor parties. Put the major parties at the very end in that upper house, because that's where we've got the chance to make a difference and to try and get in and change some of these rules and level the playing field.
I think that's so important what you said there, Craig, and we highlighted this last night with Jared. I mean, the responsibility now rests with the people because, look, ultimately from what we're seeing, it is likely to be a Greens, Labor, Teal government. Now, if that happens, God help this country based on the interview that's going to air tonight.
Yeah, well, look, so many people, unfortunately, are rusted on in politics. So I went down, we did a protest, and I saw it against the ABC. We went down and defund the ABC outside the ABC studios through the week sort of thing, which was a bit of fun. I was walking back from the ABC studios down there in Aldermo back to Central Station through that Devonshire Street tunnel. And there was a bloke sitting on a milk crate, looked quite the worse for wear. He had a small bottle of scotch. He was standing there, and we had the Libertarian shirt on. He yelled out, "What party are you guys?" So I thought, I'll go and have a yarn with this bloke. I said, "Mate, we're the Libertarians." He said, "Oh, mate, no, I'm Labor." He said, "I'm Labor." And I thought, mate, does that explain why? You're here, you're homeless, you're living on the street, you're an alcoholic drinking from this bottle of scotch, right? And you're going to vote for the people. You're going to continue to vote. You think you're like your back of your rugby league team or your Aussie rules team. That's how you're voting. Mate, I think the people that have inflicted this upon you and have caused you such hardship are the people you're going to vote for. It's not like supporting a footy team. It's supporting, it's voting for the people that are going to govern this country. And we want to see it. I see it so many times. I remember the last election down in, I was at Engadine West Primary School. And, Engadine West is sort of this cutout, sort of the national park down south. So this section that's sort of cut out and pushed to the national park, right? You cannot get better, cleaner air than anywhere in Sydney, right, than down in that Engadine West Primary School, because it's in the middle of that national park, right? There's bush and bushland and trees on the coast and everything. People are walking in, and you have to walk through the square. People are walking in double masked. So they're walking with two masks on, right? Like zombie robots going to either the Labor or Liberal Party, ignoring everything else, and going in and voting the way that they used to do. That's why we've got such difficulty in this country. It's only when people realise that their political party they may have supported, it's not their footy team. You've got to get out there and you've got to try and get as many independent people, especially into that Senate as you can, to hold these major parties to account.
Yeah, it's a shocker. I mean, how do we do we need a doge?
Well, remember during COVID, they said Anthony Fauci was the highest paid bureaucrat in the US. He was on $400,000 US. Huh? Hang on a minute. So 400,000 is like the basic starting salary for all these people in these departments down in Canberra, right? In all these public sector care, 400 is like it's 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, $1 million salary. These bureaucrats are getting in Canberra, right? Remember, so we're a population of 27 million, right? And these bureaucrats are getting paid. So all our health ministers, we had one for each state, were getting as much as Fauci, right? Who was in charge of the whole USA. So we've got these bureaucracies completely and utterly out of control, recklessly spending, right? Where we say ABC, $1 billion a day. Now, why should people that don't watch the ABC, that think they put together, that object to their left-wing bias that they continue to put to wear, why should they have to be forced to pay for the ABC? It's $1 billion. Cut, line straight through it. Sorry. Okay, ABC, you guys can continue. Just go with voluntary donations. All these people that love their ABC and think it's wonderful, well, it's fine. You guys pay to run. You guys pay to run it. And you don't even have to oblige by any standards of impartiality, which is never obliged by anyway.
What do you mean? And go with our Q&A every Monday?
Well, you can still have it, right? You still have their Q&A, but let those that want to watch it pay for it. Right? Why should everyone have to make a compulsory? You are forced to pay for the ABC through your taxes, right? Why not make it a voluntary contribution, free the money up, hand that money back to people, and if they want to watch and pay a subscription to your program or a subscription to some other podcaster, right? Let them do that. Let give people choice. Right? Rather than just have this ABC, the dominance of the ABC being thrust down people's throat, which is if they want to, if they're publicly funded, if they're privately funded, and they can put together as much left-wing garbage as they like. Who cares? Right? They're free to do so. But at the moment, they're taking the taxpayers' dollars, meant to be impartial. And every week we get this left-wing nonsense. We get Q&A. The format is that you stack the audience with leftists that all cheer and clap like these trained seals as soon as one of the leftists make a comment and sneer if there's anything that's said on a conservative basis. And then they stack the panel so you'll get one or two sort of soft, weak, lefty liberals, and then you'll have them stacked against it. So they're not frightened to stand up. Like it's just the whole thing is designed to put forward a left-wing bias to the public debates, I think.
And you're right, Craig. I mean, it's costing how much? $1 billion, is it?
$1 billion. That's $1,000 million. Right? Right. That's only one. Okay, and then let's go to our friend, the Safety Commissioner. Okay, gone. Right? Australians don't want someone imported from overseas that wants to lecture us about free speech, and that says, "Oh, what you say? Well, I don't. Australia doesn't have a Bill of Rights and a protection of freedom of speech, right? So she is entitled to tell the Australian, let the Australian people think, what she thinks we should hear. Gone, get rid of it. Clean out the education department in Canberra. Why have we got education departments in Canberra and in all the states? Clean them all out. You'd go through the place with a broom. You'd free up. Firstly, you'd stop this borrowing. You do about both Labor and Liberal. The budget they put out about a month ago, the forward estimates for the next 4 years are another $180 billion of debt. So they are planning to spend. That's their plan. We know it'll be much worse, right? But they're planning with the documents that they show us is another $180 billion. That's $180,000 million that they're going to borrow, right? Which simply means future taxes. Deficit spending is just future tax. So Albanese stands up and doesn't say, we're making all these promises. You're not going to lower taxes. You are embedding into the system future, every dollar that you spend that you don't have, that you borrow or you print, you are embedding in the system higher future taxes Australia have to pay, or you're embedding higher inflation, or both. And that's what they're both doing. And, no one's standing up. Peter Dutton should be in there saying, well, no, we're not going to match this wasteful spending. It's all borrowed. It's borrowed money. It's your kids and your grandkids that have to repay this. And we're not going to continue. Okay, maybe if there's some type of crisis period, you may have to go into deficit for 1 year, but to have deficits on for the next 4 years and on continually, it just means that we're going to have, the poor kids of today that can't even afford to rent a place or to buy a place, they're going to have to pay future taxes because of all these Labor and Liberal government schemes and this spending money that we don't have.
I mean, who brings in all these things, Craig? I mean, do they just creep in over time? I mean, I'll give you one example of something that affects a lot of people, especially like here in the country. You've got kids, they go off to uni and they apply for the study link or whatever it is through the government to get a bit of assistance to help with their rent and while they're studying. And then the social services, Centrelink, are coming back and saying, "Oh, well, your parents have got to submit their earnings, even if they're independent from you."
Yeah, look.
I mean, the whole thing's mad.
Yeah, look. One thing we've got to really support one thing that I believe we really need to do is get back and support our regional areas of this country. I remember when I was at school, we learned about there was the Albury-Wodonga decentralisation zone and how important it was to decentralise things out of Sydney. And it made sense, right? Because when you build stuff in Sydney, you've got to retrofit it, right? And you see this roadworks going on at night. They're doing like that. They're coming in and patching up part of the road at night and doing the most inefficient way you could possibly do it, the highest cost way you could possibly do it, right? That's what happens when you retrofit stuff. It's like if you try and retrofit something in your bathroom at home, so it can often be cheaper to knock the whole thing down and build it from scratch. So we're paying all this money to retrofit our infrastructure in the major capital cities at much higher cost to try and centralise everything in Sydney under this belief of these 15-minute city policies that another UN World Economic Forum plan where we all live sort of like in these giant high-rise chicken coops. We don't need a car and can catch the electric bus from wherever we want to go, or within our 15-minute city. We've got to get back and strengthen our regional areas. We've got to improve the transport links between Sydney and these regional areas. So it becomes a real viable option. So if I leave school and I'm going to get a job or something, it's going to be a real viable option for young kids living in Sydney to go and buy a place and live in Nowra or maybe down in Mossvale on the Central Highlands or Goulburn, or Bathurst or Newcastle. Okay, and they can quickly get back to Sydney quickly and easily, to visit family, friends, relatives. And that's going to take the pressure off the price of real estate in Sydney. And also, it'll mean you can set places up. You can build things a lot cheaper than retrofitting the stuff in Sydney, which we see. And people can live the Australian lifestyle we want to see people. They can have a quarter. You drive out of Sydney. If we drove down to Cooma the other day, John, from Sydney, right? The amount of land we've got down there is just incredible. And yet what the plan is to cram people in Sydney on these 300 square metre blocks where your backyard, you can't even swing a cat at, or you break wind and the neighbour person next door hears it through the paper thin walls. That's not the Australia that we should have with such a big land space that we should have.
These council areas, Craig, I mean, they're crying out for money. They can't fix the roads, and they're all running. Most of these regional councils they should be shut down. I mean, they're unfinancial, unsustainable.
Well, come and look at the money these councils are spending on the city. They got money. What is it for? What's it called? Drag Queen Story Time.
Oh, yeah.
And for was one over there, Melbourne the other day, they could paint the rainbow. Was it 40 grand to paint the rainbow strip down the street or something like this? The waste they're going in these councils is out of control. The spending we've got to reduce the size of government. It's not the cost of living crisis that we have is truly a cost of government crisis in this country.
Mm. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. That's why we need a Doge.
Yeah, we should have the cheapest energy in the world with that black coal sand that runs down our eastern seaboard, with the amount of gas that we've got. Right, we should, with the uranium we've got, the world's biggest deposits of uranium. We should have the cheapest energy in the world. We should be one of the leading nuclear industry, nuclear technology and science. We know how to do a great job down at Ansto, right? But we should be like, that should be one of our biggest export earners. Let's just not export the raw uranium. Let's export and own the technology. We haven't done that because, again, the Liberal Party and the Labor Party decided we'd have a ban on nuclear power because they were frightened that the Greens might run these scare campaigns in the election. Right? Got that coal sand that runs under our feet. So if look, we're sending 7 times what we use locally off to China and overseas for those countries to use to create cheap electricity for their people. But the Labor and Liberal Party is saying, no, you can't. Australians can't use their own coal.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, I said, like China at the moment. Okay, we got 21 gigawatts of coal fire. That's what we have left of our fleet of coal fire power stations. 21 gigawatts, which the Labor and Liberal Party are planning to close down. Right? China's got over 1,000 gigawatts already, and they have under construction and development today an extra, I think it's 421 gigawatts. So China have 20 times the size of our fleet, which we are closing down. They've got 20 times what we've got under development and construction for new stuff. And we're told we have to close down our coal-fired power stations. And for what? Even if you believe in climate change and the CO2 as a control knob, right? It's 1/100th of 1 degree by the end of this century. That's the amount of, if we go this net zero policy, right? You hear all these appeals and, we have to take action on climate change. Doesn't matter, right? Our contribution is to go net zero by 2050. We'll avoid warming. And again, this is if the so-called CO2 is the control knob, which many scientists reject. But let's just assume they're right. It's 1/100th of 1 degree by the year 2100. And that's we're supposed to destroy our economy and surrender our freedoms and turn our country upside down to avoid 1/100th of 1 degree. It's insane, completely and utterly insane.
Well, we live in a world where common sense isn't very common anymore.
Well, look, the problem I see, you need a strong opposition that is not going to be fearful of the ABC and the media, that's not going to be fearful of these left-wing commentators, that's not going to be fearful of people that will never vote for them, right? That's got to stand up and argue the case. And that's where the Liberal Party have failed. But they're always concerned about, they're frightened that they're going to upset people that will never vote for them. So they're continuing to do all these policies of appeasement to appease people that will never vote for them. So what happens? You've got people in the middle ground. If you put the strong argument, you put the facts, you put the data, if you hold your ground, right, and argue it through logically with common sense, you can sway those people. But if you just abandon it and say, "Oh no, I don't want to do I don't want to argue this case. I just want it to, I'm frightened that these lefties might attack me." This is what happens. What was I said? The Churchill's old saying, well, the appeaser is one who feeds the crocodile, hoping to be eaten last. And that's what we have in the Liberal Party today. We've got it full of appeasers. They're trying to appease all these green lefties, hoping that they won't be eaten last.
And at the end of the day, we are, as I said earlier, already a communist Marxist country in drag.
Well, if we continue as net zero, it's only going to get worse. Why do we have the living standards that we've enjoyed throughout my life, which have been so much superior to the rest of the world? Right? Our natural advantages have been that black coal sand that runs down our eastern seaboard. Right? It's been our agricultural industries. It's been our tourism industries. All those things are going to be sacrificed to the altar of net zero. Like net zero means that you would have net zero emissions, which they include the farts and burps of your beef, your dairy cattle, and your sheep. So these people that have signed up to net zero in the Liberal Party, they have signed up for the decimation of our beef, cattle, and sheep industries and our dairy cattle industries. And you've got the National Party going, oh, yeah, this is okay. Like, God help us. You think the Liberals are weak. Wait to get onto the left part of the National Party, how weak they are. Like all those export dollars we get from coal, that's all meant to close down. Like the penalties they want to have on it. Talk about it over in Europe now, they talk about all these extra taxes on international air flights and air travel. Because they say, well, you can't have all the planes flying in the skies because they burn all the jet fuel, and that's got to be stopped. That's part of net zero. So they're going to make flying so expensive that we won't be able to international tourists. Australians won't be able to afford to travel overseas.
Yep.
And God help our poor Pacific nation islanders, right? All those island economies. They say, the islands are sinking, the islands are sinking. No, they're not sinking. They're growing inside. That's what the science says, right? Those island economies are reliant upon tourism. Now, how are these economies going to go when you've got all these huge taxes on international air travel that's going to try and wipe out the tourism sector in years to come? If I'm China, you beauty, you want those Pacific Island nations weak because it gives you greater influence to come in with they're more susceptible to coming in the Chinese buying the places out. We are headed in the exact wrong direction on so many areas of policy. It ain't funny.
Well, our time's up, Craig, and as usual, it's just been an hour of common sense. And, we're getting a bit of that now from some very dedicated people who have served the Liberal Party. Russell Broadbent, we mustn't discount him either.
Yeah, mate, sorry, I must be. What a good man Russell is.
Absolutely.
I had the one mistake I made. I should have voted. Russell should have been the Speaker of the Parliament. I wish I had voted for Russell. I didn't. That was one of the things I regret. Russell is a truly decent, honest man.
Yep.
He's exactly the type of person you want there in that lower house, right?
Yeah.
That looks upon the things and looks upon it with his life experience, humility, a good heart, a good decent heart. I just hope the people of his electorate are down there in Victoria support Russell, because he's saying, to think that he's going to be replaced with just another lackey from the Liberal Party would just be a tragedy. It really would.
Yeah, well, I'm sitting in my den and there's a photo of my dad in his World War II Desert Army uniform. And he's looking at me as if to say, don't you dare let those bastards run this country.
Yeah. Well, look, we can finish off on one note, okay? What happens to our country depends on us. Right? So no one's coming to save us. It's up to us. It's up to every single one of us. So if you can help our candidates, and I'd love you to help. If you don't help the Libertarian Party, if you're in Russell Broadbent's electorate, go and help Russell, right? If you don't want to help the Libertarian Party, if you don't like me for whatever, okay, now go and help one of the other smaller, minor freedom parties. But please try and give us some help on election day. Go to the party's websites. You can see there, you can volunteer. Just 1 hour standing on a booth makes such a difference. Right? Most people will rock up to, whether they're Labor or Liberal, they'll just rock up and vote anyway. It doesn't matter too much about if people are manning the booths. But for the minor parties, we found if you got someone on the booth handing out a vote card, your vote goes up four or five-fold. So if you want to try and help your nation, if you want to do something to fight back, volunteer just for an hour on election day to help your local candidate, to stand on the booth. If you don't want to stand in a booth in your local area, you can go, somewhere on the other side of town where you're not known. But just try and give us an hour of support to try and help us on election day, to try and make a difference, to take this country back.
For the sake of our nation, for the sake of our kids, we've got to fight.
And look, you've got to check what your local candidate is doing. I mean, even if you do like the local Liberal or you do like the local National, I mean, whoever you want to vote for, I mean, have a look at who they're telling you to vote for. I mean, I just looked at Michael McCormack's how to vote card, former Deputy Prime Minister from the National Party in the seat of Riverina, where I am. Now, the Labor Party guy is number 6 on his preference list. The Libertarian is number 12.
That's the same thing here in my old electorate of Hughes, right? So we're libertarian. We stand for lower taxes, more freedom. We oppose the socialist agenda of the Labor Party. We want to get you go through, you tick off everyone of what the Labor Party believes in, right? So you've got us, and then you've got the Labor Party with Albanese, hardcore socialist left, is going to bring in these policies and signing us up to all these globalised treaties and wants to put the price of our cars up. Right? And who are they preferencing? They're preferencing the Labor. In my old seat of Hughes, they're preferencing the Labor Party ahead of the Libertarian Party.
They're preferencing the Communist Party.
Yes, that's right. So that anyone that thinks, we talk about a uni party and we're just making it up, have a look at it's in my election and other electorates where they're actually preferencing the Labor Party. The Liberal Party of Australia is preferencing the Labor Party ahead of the Libertarians.
Well, that tells you everything. And I mean, that's why we have to be so dedicated to what we're doing in the Senate, because unless there are checks and balances, these people are going to rough ride us into hell.
Correct.
We are in real trouble.
Well, look, I know we're over time, but just look at the other example of that hate speech legislation, right? Now, remember, the Senate is set up under our Constitution to be a house of review, right? The hate speech legislation gets rushed through the lower house on this scare campaign that there was a truck of dynamite somewhere set up that was going to blow up somewhere. It was all a criminal con job in there, right? So the Senate is meant to be the house of review. So in that house of review, the Labor and Liberal parties got together and said, we'll allow 1 hour of debate, right? You got 76 senators, so we'll allow 50 seconds for each member of the Senate to debate this, and then we'll put it through a vote. How is that the House of Review when they're pushing through laws like that, right? When there's no need to push it through, it could have been the Senate. It is prohibiting the Senate from doing its job of being the House of Review, and they can only do that because they've got so many of the Uni Party, Labor and Liberal Party joining together hand in hand, where that Senate is being run as a party political chamber rather than what its constitutional intent was, to be a true House of Review.
Constitutional intent.
Well, that's what it was. Remember, when our forefathers set up that constitution, we said, we'll go a Westminster system, we'll have a lower house and an upper house. So in the UK, remember, it was the House of Commons and the House of Lords. And the House of Commons ran everything. The House of Lords basically were a House of Review. So we set up what was equivalent. Our House of Commons, the House of Representatives, where it was a geographical population based, where everyone got a vote. And then the Senate was set up on a state basis. So each state had the same number of senators. It was meant to protect the state's rights and be a House of Review. Now, what it's turned into is just a Labor-Liberal control thing where there's no review. It's just tick and flick. And the senators in there, if you're a Labor senator in there, you don't review anything. You're told how to vote, right? And you just rock up there. When they would walk into the parliamentary chamber, they wouldn't even know what the legislation was they were voting on. They wouldn't even have given it consideration. They would look at it and say, where are the rest of the Labor people? I'll go and sit there. That's not a house. And the Liberals are just the same. There's only a few of them that have actually considered, like someone like Alec Antic over in South Australia. Right? He's one of the very few. Matt Canavan's also one of the very few that will actually look at the legislation. Hang on a minute. This doesn't make sense. This bullshit. We've got to debate this. We're looking at it closely. Then what happens? Most of those Liberal members in the Senate, they will just rock up there. And I said they wouldn't know what they were even bloody were voting on. They'd hear the bells ring, they'd wander down, and they'd say, where's which side of the Liberals on? And go and sit with them all. And they're meant to be the senators in the House of Review. That's why, whatever recommendation I give to everyone, make sure you put the minor parties, in New South Wales, it's me, the Libertarian, so I'm speaking from vested interest, I'll declare that. But make sure you put those minor parties first in the Senate and give the major parties a miss.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And Peter Dutton, you need to grow some balls, my friend. You really need to grow some.
It's unfortunately, I think it's it's too late to fatten the pig on market day.
Yeah.
It was handled when President Trump won, and Trump said, "I'm getting out of the World Health Organization." Right? He gave it to Peter Dutton on a platter.
Yep.
Peter Dutton said, "Well, what's the point of us staying in the World Health Organization because the USA is pulling out? He can at least say we need to reconsider this or have a debate or discussion about it." Right? When Trump said he was pulling out of the Paris Treaty, right? Well, a sensible leader would say, "Well, China's out, US is out, Russia's out, India's out, Indonesia's out.
What's the point?
We need when we said we were in was on the basis of all these other countries being in. Now they're all out. I think we at least have a look at it." And what did he do? They said, "No, we're signed up to it, right?" We won. I know we're over time, but Kevin Rudd, right? Kevin Rudd's position was untenable as our ambassador in the USA because of the comments that he had made. Now, it doesn't matter what political party that you are from. I want someone in the USA that is good mates with Trump, right? I want someone that if there's some problem down here, can pick the phone up, have Trump on speed dial. He calls him through and Trump picks the phone. "Oh, it's my mate from Australia. Yeah, I had a game of golf with him a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, mate. Yeah, mate. What's the problem, right? What can we do for you, right?" Do you reckon if Rudd rang through to Trump, he'd even get through to a number? So it was obvious Rudd had to be recalled. What did Peter Dutton do? Instead of saying, "Look, come on, Anthony Albanese, let's get someone else in there other than Rudd. He's not in the best interest of our nation. He can't be effective." Dutton says, "Oh no, my instinct is to keep Rudd there."
Well, they do love to throw a good drag party over there. They've got some very good, people on the keyboards. Oh, dear.
I wonder you're always saying you couldn't make this stuff up.
You couldn't make it up.
Oh dear, I tell you what. My voice is fading, as you can hear. We've been on the blower since I got back from America, Johnny. You drive me crazy.
Yep.
Tomorrow we're doing another road trip. We're off to the races at Bathurst. I'm going to talk to a lot of the punters up there, try and let them know what's happening with this. Firstly, with this Aboriginal land claim over Mount Panorama, which is madness. So we've seen places like Mount Warning closed down. I want to close down all these beautiful national parks that we have. Close Bathurst down. So we're going there. We're going to also going out to the gold mine. Good old Tanya Plezovic has closed down the gold mine. We don't, we got that much money. We don't need that gold. I just closed. But there was some Aboriginal serpent or something some woman dreamt up. So that was enough to close down $1 billion gold mine, right? And to where they're building, I think their world's biggest wind farm or something out over on. So that's our trip over the next couple of days to try and get a few of those videos up on social media.
Well, I hope every time you speak publicly, you do a welcome to country.
A sad state.
Really, it's the welcome for country. I think in some places has some place, okay, but they do it for everything. For opening of an envelope, we'd have committee inquiries down in Canberra, and people come up and they'd want to give a welcome to country every time they spoke. I'm scratching my head. I even argued with Ken White. I said, "Mate," I says, "if you keep doing this all the time," I says, "it will lose all its significance and Aussies will be fed up with it and we won't want it. And actually, when we hear it, we'll find it objectionable."
We're already there.
And we're there. That's where we are. You got all these listeners. It's not about, they don't give a rat's about a welcome to country. You can see it. These people that say it. It's about themselves making themselves feel good. It's just pure and utter virtue signaling.
Yep, 100%. And as Mark Latham said, have any of these people whinging about this actually gone out to Wilcannia or Burke or any of these places and struck a blow? No.
Unbelievable. Well, I'm going to talk to the boss. We need all the help we can get.
Please do.
Dear Lord Father in heaven, we are here talking about the future of the great south land of the Holy Spirit. So, Father God, we just pray for your intervention. We pray for your wisdom, courage, strength, and compassion, because this country is worth it. So please be with us, guide and lead our thinking. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Johnny?
You just couldn't make this stuff up.
Craig Kelly, you're a champ as always, mate. And I was going to make a comment about all those green bills on your coffee table.
Green bill. Oh, yeah. Actually, have I got some?
Have you got some? Please.
I've got one set. I'm only short, so I'll go and get some. Hang on.
Oh, Johnny's got the big one.
Hang on, what have we got here?
Can't see it, Johnny.
It's
Oh,
hard
look at him with his shorts on. Look, he looks like he's.
No, I look like
Right.
On.
Firstly, that's the big one.
There we go.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the $1 billion note.
Yeah.
And what we did in Canberra, we had 1,000 of these, and we put them on the lawns of Parliament House. So we had $1,000 billion to represent the $1 trillion debt that we are almost in. Right? As you can see there, we had a good old Uncle Ned on the picture there, and Uncle Ned holding a gun, which sort of thing was that. And the Reserve Bank got all upset, and they said, "Oh, we'd engaged in like a copyright." I said, "Hang on, there's a provision in the Copyright Act for parody and satire." I says, "Can't you see the parody and satire of having a banknote Ned Kelly holding up a gun?" They didn't get that. Now the other one we did were these.
Hold them up.
There you go, right?
There you go.
Right. So they look like from a distance on a table, they look like $100 bills, right? But what they actually are, these are the $1 trillion notes.
We're back in business, Hoody.
Right?
Back in business.
Again with Uncle Ned on it and the thing there, and they got the Reserve Bank got very upset with me over this. But on the back, the reason I did this is I printed on the back to emphasize how much $1 trillion actually is, right? So you can see there, right, okay. So $1 million is that small pile of money on the ground in that first frame, right? Then you go to $100 million is a pallet of $100 bills, right?
Yeah.
$1 billion is 10 pallets of $100 bills, right? And here's what $1 trillion looked like down the bottom in double stacked pallets. That $1 trillion is how much extra that the Labor and Liberal Party have borrowed in our name, which is future taxes we're going to have to pay. So that was the whole point. And everyone thought that I was going to make you guys, it was some type of secret deal or something we had. I was giving you a pile of these.
I'll tell you what, Johnny and I capitalised on that, Craig. I'll tell you how we did it. We took one of those $1 billion bills,
yes,
to the coffee shop, and we ordered a couple of cappuccinos, and we stood there and waited for the change.
Don't actually laugh, right? Because I think it was Zimbabwe. Did they print up $100 trillion note at one stage? And the way Albanese's heading this country, right? But Operation Zimbabwe, you never know. We might one day, the way they're going, actually have $2 billion notes.
I mean, what a comedy. Look, at the end of the day, how could a bloke like that become a prime minister in any country, let alone this one? It's just absolutely remarkable. Grubbery, right?
Yeah, well, look, honestly, firstly, it shows you the talent that the Labor Party has. The people get elected to the Labor Party, right? Secondly, it's the unionised control of the Labor Party, a factional basis that you take your turn sort of thing. You get in a safe seat, you stay there and suck up, and then it's the weakness of the opposition.
Craig, the Chinese Navy sailing around Australian coastline doing live firing exercises.
This is a real serious issue, right? I had had some meetings with, I don't know if this is any trade secret, but some of the Navy guys and the divers, and they said, when you think of mines, you think of a mine floating in the water, and the ship runs into it and crashes. Okay, he said the modern mine sits on the bottom of the ocean, right? and they can actually look at the wake of the ship to know what ship it is. So each ship, depending on the size, shape of its hull, has a different wave pattern, and that these things can detect what they are. And the way the mine goes, it basically explodes on the bottom and creates a giant air bubble that comes to the surface. The ship's sailing along, all of a sudden there's an air bubble. It falls in the air bubble, the hull cracks and it's done. Right? They could deploy these with these submarines off our ports and basically block any oil shipment or any container shipment coming in or out of the country. And in 2 weeks' time, we would run out of diesel fuel in this nation. That means you couldn't get the tractors and the farm equipment to harvest the crops in the fields, let alone transport the stuff to the cities. If you thought there was mass panic over toilet paper during COVID, imagine the mass panic if there was over food, if we'd run out of diesel in this country. And that's why...
Two Army intelligence officers briefed me about 18 months ago on just that scenario. They said that's how the Chinese will do it.
Right. They wouldn't have to fire a shot against us. No. And this is why we need to make sure that we have got ample fuel reserves in this country, right? And there's a thing called this International Energy Agency agreement. We're meant to have a certain amount of supply of liquid fuels in our country, subject to our imports. So there's 9 or 10 times. Right? A decade ago, I was bringing this up, right? And we now have what's called tickets. So the fuels over in the US, and they say it's okay. We're in line with our this requirement because we've got tickets that says we've got to call on this oil in the USA. How the hell are you going to get, in the case of an emergency, how are you going to ship the oil from the USA to Australia if our ports are all closed down? They wouldn't get insurance, right? This is why one of the industries we should have in this country is coal liquefaction, right? Yeah. And that is where you turn coal into oil. They do it in South Africa, right? They did it in Europe during the Second World War. We did it to shale oil during World War One. You can turn the coal into oil, right, by a process called liquefaction, okay? And it is economically viable. Well, the reason we don't do it is because it lets off a lot of CO2 emissions, and it would be in breach of our Paris Treaty agreements. Right?
Heaven forbid our plants and trees might actually flourish.
Yeah, we should have in this nation. We should aim to at least have a certain amount of fuel sufficiency for oil and liquid fuels in this country. We can do it, but again, anyone that wants to drill anywhere for oil, no, you can't do that. We've closed down most of our oil refineries. That is where we are highly vulnerable. As I said, the Chinese could take us over without even firing a shot.
Well, we better get this thing to air because everybody will be watching this on Good Friday night and beyond. So it's worth it for all of us to reflect on the sacrifice that was made that we commemorate this weekend for all our freedom, for our freedom to choose. And that's what it's about. And we're in a battle between good and evil, and we have to choose which side we're going to be on. And it's not communist Labor. It's not communist Labor. So, Craig Kelly, we want to thank you once again, mate. Our best wishes for the election.
Thank you. Thanks, boys.
You're a fighter, and we appreciate all your efforts and your common sense, and we'd love to see you in the Senate.
Well, no, I'd love. I know I'm speaking, but I'd love to see myself in the Senate. Yeah. I feel as though I've got, I've got a lot of unfinished business in that Parliament. I've got a lot of these bureaucrats to hold to account for what they did to this country during COVID. Yeah, Senate is the place I can do it, and I just, hope that I get that chance.
We hope so too. So for everyone watching, more interviews coming at you next week. It's been a great week, Johnny. Great to be back in the chair with you, mate.
Thanks, buddy. It's been a good week, and everyone enjoy their long weekend.
Yeah, thanks for the hospitality down in Cooma, John, the other day. It's a
Cooma.
Beautiful. It really is a beautiful, beautiful little town. I can see why you love it so much and why you're based down there.
Tumut, mate. Tumut.
Sorry. Sorry, Tumut's beautiful. Tumut's beautiful, but Tumut, you're right. Tumut is it's a very special town. We drove on the other little townships we drove on through Warren, what's it called?
Batlow, Tumbarumba.
Tumbarumba. All the pubs were closed in Tumbarumba. I know the boys, John and Rob, that I went down with. They like a beer, so they want to stop in a beer. We stopped at. They said, "Let's go and get a beer in Tumbarumba," and the pub in the main street was closed. And we said, "So mate, where can we get a beer?" So, oh, mate, all the pubs are closed.
Wow.
Well, you should have gone round to Tumbarumba Sal's place, Johnny.
Yeah, should have gone there.
So
Sally would have a cold one in the fridge for Craig.
Yeah, so we ended up going to the bowling club and had a drink there before we headed home. So
Beautiful.
All right, guys. Well, thanks to everyone for watching us this week. We'll be back next week with more episodes of Club Grubbery. Don't forget, this is a great country because you live in it. Treasure it and vote wisely. God bless you all. Thanks for watching and bye for now.
thanks, Woody. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Craig.